Hello everybody, Joe here with Garden of Luma, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more about growing sugar apple trees, specifically for hot, dry climates like the Phoenix, Arizona desert that I'm in here. And so today I want to show you my sugar apple trees and talk a little bit more about how I care for those trees and how you can too as well. So let's check it out here. Here's the sugar apple that I have in the ground here. It's kind of hard to see because it's surrounded by blackberries. It was just really a seed I tossed over here and it sprouted, so I just left it here. And as you can see, the leaves are a little bit beat up. It has been really cold here this year, into the mid-20s for consecutive nights. And these trees are pretty tropical, so they don't like to be cold at all. They don't like to be below like 35 degrees, especially consistently. And this seedling here is also in kind of a moist area. We've been getting a lot of rain here as well. And with the mulch and everything else in here, it's been pretty moist. But, I mean, it's still alive, and we'll just see how it goes. And it has grown really slowly because it doesn't get a whole lot of sun here. This spot is really covered up top here, as you can see, and that's why I've gotten away with not protecting this at all, though. With that coverage up above, it has protected this enough to keep it alive. Typically in the mid-20s, this thing would have been dead, you know, without that coverage, without protection or something. So just wanted to show you this one that's in the ground here, and you can kind of see the difference when I show you my container grown sugar apple tree. So let's take a look at that. Okay, here's my sugar apple tree in the container. As you can see, it looks really good, still pretty green. Has dropped some leaves, which is natural for these trees to do throughout the winter. They slowly throughout the winter drop leaves until spring, when they start sending out the new growth is when they kind of finish their cycle. So they don't completely go bare throughout the winter like a peach tree or something like that would do, but it's just more slowly throughout the winter. They'll just drop leaves here and there until they about completely lose their leaves just as they're pushing out the new growth. But this guy looks pretty green, still has quite a bit of foliage on it because I have brought this guy indoors. So when it gets cold, below like those 35-degree temperatures, I bring this guy inside at night, keep it protected from those cold nights. And as you can see, the difference between this one and the one in the ground, size-wise, there's quite a bit of difference, because these guys do like to get a decent amount of sun. So if they aren't getting that sun like the other one I showed you in the ground against the wall there, then they aren't going to grow as much or as vigorously. So these guys actually do pretty well in our hot, dry climate as long as they get protected from the winters, those cold nights. They don't like to be consistently cold, as I've mentioned. And so both of my sugar apples I planted as seeds from a fresh fruit that I was able to find in an ethnic market. And I really enjoyed the fruit. I've had, you know, cherimoya, and they are related. They're in that same family, the Annona family, so they're related to cherimoya, atamoya, soursop, and some of those types of trees, those tropicals. And I really like the sugar apple. It's a little bit different because the flesh, it isn't like as meaty as like a cherimoya. It's more of, the flesh is more around the seeds, and you kind of just suck the pulp off the seeds. But it does really juicy, has a really good taste to it. Almost kind of reminds me of like a mangosteen or something, if you've had those before, where you just kind of suck the pulp off of those seeds and just eat it that way. But here you go. So this guy I keep in a container here. I use just what I use on all my fruit trees and containers, is like a cactus mix, which promotes good drainage. I do not use like things like potting soil and that kind of thing that I see some people typically use. Not for fruit trees anyways, because it holds too much moisture and then you're susceptible for root rot and things like that. So a cactus mix with like sand, lava sand, things like that for drainage are really good for container fruit trees. This guy in the winter does not like wet feet, so I keep it more on the dry side. And so they do go fairly like dormant throughout the winter too, so that's another thing to keep in mind, you know, especially if you're growing it outdoors. So don't overwater these guys in the winter. They don't really grow at all throughout the winter. In my climate where we get colder, they may in the tropics, I'm not really sure there, but where you do get colder temps, they'll slow down in the winter and pretty much come to a standstill until spring. Then they start shooting out their new growth. So don't, make sure that you don't overwater, give them that wet feet to get the root rot and that kind of things. So as you can see, this guy has grown pretty quickly for only, let's see, 2 years from seed now. I started these seeds in 2017. And I actually had flowers this first year, a year after growing it, this last spring. So I'm thinking maybe I can get fruit off of this tree this upcoming spring. I'm hopeful anyways. It looks like now it could hold some fruit. Before it still was pretty small last spring and didn't have the structure that it has now to hold the fruits and things. And you do have to hand pollinate these guys. They have the flowers that turn from female to male, and you have to go out here and collect the pollen from when they're in the male stage and then pollinate it when it changes to the female. So it is a little bit of a process to pollinate these trees. They aren't just pollinated like a lot of trees usually are through bees or whatever. But overall, this is sugar apple. It does really well in hot, dry climates. I think this guy handles the dry air a lot better than some of the other Annonas that I have growing. So it seems to handle dry climates pretty well. And it doesn't mind the heat that we get as much either, as long as it's not just sitting out in full sun in 120-degree days, but you give it some of that afternoon shade and things. It actually does pretty well in our desert summer sun here. All right, so there you go, sugar apple. Definitely comment down below if you've had any experiences growing these that you want to share. Subscribe, hit the like button, and then check me out at gardenofluma.com for more tips on gardening, growing fruit trees specifically for hot, dry climates. Thanks for watching.